We looked from each other to all around us as the room shook. The various pictures that dotted the walls began to fall off, causing them to crack and break. We held on for dear life to our chairs and pulled our feet inward to protect them. And then, as suddenly as the earthquake began, it tapered off until nothing more could be felt. We cautiously set our feet back on the ground, feeling for any vibrations, and slowly stood. "What in the world do you suppose that was?" I asked Deb, who looked as bewildered as I felt. I don't know. You don't think it has anything to do with the offerings to the twins, do you?" she asked me in return. "I don't know. It is possible, though. It's midday after all. What exactly is the offering they gave? Do you know?" I asked in response as I walked over to the windows and looked out. "The same offering the Master Chief gave in the story. They are to cast to the winds offerings of ground white corn, shells from the creatures of the water, pollen from our best flowers, and the war paint we used in the older days." Then she added, "Then they take decorated plume sticks up to the mountains and complete a ceremony. Then they use them to mark the sacred sites and leave them there to appease the twins," she answered, following me to the window. "Once this is done, what happens then?" "They come back to us and we go from there," Deb told me. So we waited for their return, cleaning up the broken glass and picture frames. I had never really taken the time to look at them, but now as we cleaned, I began to take note of them. Hopefully, I'd be able to gradually decipher them in time based on things I would learn about the town and its residents. After a couple of hours, the men came back to the hotel and I ran to let them back in. Once inside, I could see from their expressions on their faces and their wide eyes that something had happened on those mountains, something extraordinary. I ushered them to sit in the now cleaned up room. Deb and I sat on the couch opposite to Nathaniel and eagerly awaited his story. "What happened on the mountain? We heard and felt a great earthquake," I asked. Nathaniel sat there speechless for a moment, and then he said, "The twin gods came to the mountain. We gave them our offerings and it appealed to their better nature. They came down in spirit, like a bright flame, and they told us what to do to kill the cannibal demons." Deb and I looked again to each other, excited to hear more. Then Deb asked something in her native tongue that I didn't understand, and Nathaniel nodded in response, causing Deb to become excited and exclaim, "The gods are truly generous." What happened then?" I asked, Deb's excitement rubbing off on me. "They came to the peak of the mountain and breathed into the nostrils of us all, giving to us much wisdom and strength, hallowing our weapons and giving them power. We know now how to defeat the demons that walk this land, and they have lent us a bit of their strength to accomplish this task," Nathaniel told me. Now I was all ears, as if I hadn't been before, but even more so now, if that's even possible. "How do we kill them?" He looked at each of the men sitting in our semicircle around him and said, "The men and I will wait till dark. When they decide to come around, we will take the bows and arrows and clubs made for us by our people, the very same ones that the twins hallowed, and we will attack them as they come. Then we are to bring their corpses to the mountains and leave them to the twins, to do with as they wish." Deb was in awe, and I must admit something within me was as well. I didn't know the ancient stories that Deb did or the power that the tribe yielded, but something within me understood and took great joy in the knowledge that some things, while not known, can be absolutely amazing and powerful far beyond comprehension. We all sat in silence for a moment and contemplated what was needed to prepare for the coming of the demons and evil spirits, and no one said a word for a good long while. I finally broke the silence and asked quietly to Deb and Nathaniel, "What can I do to help? I want to be able to help and support you in some way, since it's my family's and the town's fault that this was all brought about." Nathaniel looked at me with kindness and understanding and said, "Do not worry. I haven't forgotten you or Deb. We will need someone brave enough to be the bait in capturing the demons so we can kill them. Only, though, if you are up to the task." I sat up straighter in my seat and stiffened my jaw, holding my head up high, and with a deep sigh said, "I am more than up to the task. It would be my honor to be chosen to help you if I can." It was settled then. We decided that on that night, as the sunset and dusk came about, we would go through the town, and wherever we saw the demons, we would trap them into the alleyways for slaughter. Deb's job and mine was to be the bait, and lure the demons and spirits to the alleys with sweet-scented meats from various animals. And once in the alleyways, we would flee from them out the back, and the men would lay siege upon them. At least 3 men were to be at the end of each alleyway, and we were to double back and cut the demons off at the front, with bitter-smelling herbs and sage, salting the earth in lines behind and in front of us as we went, since the evil spirits of the world can't stand the purity of salt. The closer it became to dusk, the more anxious I became. Soon it was time to leave the hotel. Locking the doors behind us, we set about our mission. We all headed out into the night, ever vigilant and wary. We knew all it would take was one slip-up and the whole thing could go awry. As our group split up into different directions, Deb and I stayed close together, our arms clasped so as not to lose one another in the twilight, when shapes and shadows can look like any number of fearsome things. As we walked together, with sticks filled with gamey-smelling meat, we traveled from the hotel to the edge of town. Once at the edge, we turned and stood for a moment, then slowly began our walk, from one end to the other, watching for any sign of movement as we went. Soon we began to hear a rustling from behind us. We turned sharply and glanced behind, and for a moment I thought I could see a rainbow move in the distance. The longer I stared, the less movement I saw. After a few moments, we turned and continued about our way. When we were in and around the center of town, the wind picked up, and on the wind we heard a loud bellowing, as if somebody was crying out for someone in the heavens to hear. We grew afraid then, of the fierce bellow and of the creature that made it. As the wind died down, there came yet again a rustling sound, but this time it was accompanied by the fast padding of feet. We turned yet again, this time to behold one of the demons come from the shadows as it neared us. It shifted from a black form into a fearsome giant before our eyes. In that moment, all I could think was how the entry from the red binder didn't do the beast justice. We turned and ran then for the nearest alleyway, hoping we could reach it in time. The demon was terrible to behold. It was as the stories had said, a giant man with bulging, bloodshot eyes, covered in porcupine-like quills and black and white scales, ugly as could be, his sharp smile stretching from ear to ear. My heart began to pound out of my chest as we ran to the alley. Holding hands with Deb, we at last came to the entrance of the alleyway, and we dropped our sticks and fled around to the other side, but not before lining the exit with salt. We heard a loud cry come then from the night. We sprinted around to the back of the post office to the front of the alley and laid the salt down there. Then we lit the bundles of herbs and sage and waved it at the demon, who was now trapped in between us and the tribesmen. Nathaniel stood tall and strong in the dark as he pulled an arrow back in his bow and loosed it before we could even blink. The arrow sailed through the air before piercing the chest of the demon straight to the heart. The great giant fell as his heart gave out, and with a great crash and thump hit the ground so hard it made the pebbles and stones tremble at our feet. Before we had time to cheer or congratulate one another, we heard another cannibal demon and another, one close by and one further away. Now was our time to catch more. We broke the line of salt in the sandy dirt and ran through the streets to the next alley. The next demon was on us before we had time to catch our breath. The third was fast also, and came towards us from the front and the second from the back. In the blink of an eye, I ran forward and Deb ran back. We separated then, not by choice, rather, but by mistake, and headed in different directions. I ran as fast as I could then to the next alley between the hotel and the pharmacy. I tried to get there in time, but was cut off by the now chuckling demon. I ran in the opposite direction, trying to get away from him. I paid too much attention to the speed of my steps rather than where they led, as I watched the demon over my shoulder. When I finally had the chance to turn around, I noticed that I was on the town line. And before I could stop, I tripped over my own 2 feet, as I have been frequently known to do, and fell whole-bodied across the line. I heard a scream from behind me, as well as other voices shouting and carrying on, and a feminine voice called out my name. I hit the ground with a hard knock, head first against a flat rock, a surge of pain exploding through my head. When I came to, I was back at the hotel, in my room, my head pounding and my vision blurry. I tried to sit up but couldn't from the pain. I heard a woman's voice say, "She's awake, go get Nathaniel," as I heard footsteps leading down the hall to the lobby. Before I could see straight, the same person leaned over me and said, "Just hold on, be still, you're all right, you're safe now." I lay there for a few moments longer, rubbing my eyes to try and stimulate them to work again, my arms heavy and hard to lift. That's when I heard 2 sets of footsteps out in the hall coming to my room. I heard the first voice speak again, which I now recognized to be Lily's. "It's all right, dear. Nathaniel has dressed your wounds and has made you comfortable." Autumn, can you hear us?" a second voice belonging to Nathaniel asked. "Yeah, I can," I uttered in response, still groggy and my mind unclear. "What happened?" "You took a fall and fell headfirst into a great rock. You have a nasty bump and scrape on your head, but otherwise are fine," Nathaniel answered. And then a third person added, "We got separated and things went wrong, but we got them. We got all the demons. We didn't find you until everything was over. We almost began to think you had been eaten." It was Deb. "When did you get here?" I asked, and turning my head in the direction of Lily's voice. "I came back to let you know about rebuilding the hotel, but you weren't inside and the doors were locked. That's when I heard the yelling and shouting. I saw you fall and rushed as close as I could to the town line, but I couldn't reach you since you went over it. I thought you were dead." "Why would you think that?" I asked her, my vision beginning to return as the minutes passed. "Once you enter the town, if you are a member of the townspeople or our family, you can never leave alive. Many of the caretakers have tried, only to wind up dead as a result. I thought you would too. In fact, I truly don't understand how you are still alive." "I don't either. It is quite strange," added Nathaniel. "Well, let's all just be happy she's all right. We can look into that another time. How about we just let her rest for now?" Deb said. So, they allowed me to rest and left the room, turning out the lights as they went. Now I was as perplexed as they were. I knew I could never leave the town, and even though I was liked by the native peoples, it didn't change my heritage or my fate. So how was I able to fall over the town line and come back to it alive and without any lasting damage? I didn't know the answer to this question, but it rattled in my mind till I was finally able to fall asleep. I would definitely be revisiting this incident in the morning for sure. The next morning when I woke up, my head was still pounding and sore. I slowly got up from my bed and made my way to the bathroom. I figured a nice hot shower might relieve the tension in my neck and shoulders where the pain seemed to radiate. After I finished, I must admit that I felt a lot better, the headache subsiding till it was only hardly noticeable. I put some fresh, new clothes on and headed downstairs. As I went down the halls, I could hear the clattering and clinking of plates and cups coming from the dining room. I stopped at the door before entering, and right as I was about to open the door, I heard a voice behind me in a whisper. "Oh, good, you're finally awake." I jumped, being startled by the sudden sound, and turned to see Lily. "Would you stop doing that? You're gonna give me a heart attack." "Sorry," she said, still whispering. "Why are we whispering?" I asked, perplexed. "I don't want them to hear me yet," she answered, gesturing with a slight nod in the direction of the dining room. "Who? Do you mean Nathaniel, Deb, and the others?" I asked, still confused. "Yes, of course. Who else would I be talking about?" she stated, getting that haughty tone in her voice again. "Oh my gosh, will you let the past be the past and let it go? They cursed the town, yeah, but they had just cause to. Furthermore, it was our ancestor, Rosa, that cursed us. So if you gotta be mad about something, be mad about that," I stated, as I opened the door huffily and entered the room with Lily gaping behind me, not saying a word, and following reluctantly behind. As we entered the room, everyone fell silent and all heads turned to me. They stared for a moment and then went back to Eden. I noticed some of the men had various wounds and scrapes on their faces, arms, and necks. I assumed that they had gotten these battle wounds while capturing and killing the various demons the night before. They stared at me for a few moments before Nathaniel and Deb stood to greet me. "You're awake. Thank goodness. We were starting to worry you weren't ever going to show," Deb said excitedly as she gathered me into a tight embrace. "I'm so glad you're going to be okay." Nathaniel stood by and watched us as we hugged. Once we finished, he said, "I'm glad to see that you are okay. We were very worried when we found you across the town line. Come and sit with us and we can discuss what happened last night." We made our way over to the dining room table and sat down and over a hearty breakfast and discussed what had happened the night before. According to Nathaniel, after I had gotten separated from the group, they caught the second demon that came fast upon us. Deb led him single-handedly to the alleyway, and the men that were there clubbed and pummeled that particular demon to death. The third cannibal demon that went after me can be seen right on my heels, according to Deb. She only saw us for a brief second before she had to turn her full attention to her own demon. They both told me that an unlikely third party was the one who had saved my bacon. Apparently, just as I had fallen over the town line, Lily had seen me and yelled out my name, and Jasper came busting out of the post office. He ran towards the demon and yelled at it till it turned its attention towards him. Right about then, the creature forsook me and went after Jasper, right as Deb was finishing with her own. She grabbed hold of Jasper and snatched him into the alleyway, and they together trapped the third beast. Deb said that the men in the alley must have shot and beaten the thing past all recognition before they truly stopped. Once everything had died down, and they got the three demons, they began to hear voices from afar. Noticing I was gone, they came looking for me only to find Lily, as close to the edge of the town line as possible, crying out for help. They saw me and immediately ran to my aid, only to discover I was just fine despite the knock I took to my head. Nathaniel and Deb were able to pull me back into the town, and Jasper took me to the hotel as Lily unlocked the doors. Jasper carried me to the bedroom and set me down while Lily, Nathaniel, and Deb began to care for me and look me over, looking for any unseen wounds or any lasting, permanent damage. They quickly discovered me to be fine and carefully bandaged my head wound while I was still unconscious. Jasper and Nathaniel went to try and help the other men while Lily and Deb stayed by my side, watching over me. As for the nameless ones that everyone began to hear in the distance, they left them alone for the night and returned to the hotel, just in time for me to wake up briefly. Now that the account of last night before had been told to me, I wanted to ask the most obvious question. How did I fall over the town line and survive? Didn't you say that the others that had done so before me had actually died? I began finishing the last of my scrambled eggs on my plate. Yes, there were several before. Some by accident and others by choice walked over the town line and died. Our family was cursed the night Rosa enacted that spell, so that whoever comes into the town and is a family member can't ever leave. We are bound by blood to this place till the day we die. I figured out long ago how to jump through time and have been doing it ever since. So have two others, but I haven't shared with you how it's done," she told me, as she sipped on some hot tea. "How do you do that? Is it a secret, or will you share it with us?" Deb asked, as Nathaniel nodded along in agreement. Lily sighed, and refusing to look at them, turned once again towards me. "Long ago, back when I was your age, I figured out the dangers of this town and the hotel that sits in it. I decided I was safest when constantly on the move, so I traveled everywhere in town. After a time, I grew to hate this prison I was trapped in and would walk close to the town line. I stood one day at the edge and wondering what would happen, and not caring what would occur, I stuck my arm out over the line. Nothing happened. I stood a little longer and still nothing. So I pulled my arm back and headed to the hotel, only to discover that for whatever reason, I had traveled backwards in time. I went from my time in 1904 to 1832. I walked into a bustling hotel where dozens of people sat in the sitting room and a different caretaker was sitting at the lobby desk. I was so confused. However, long story short, I discovered the town wasn't entirely bound by the rules of time. Somewhere there is a wall that lines around the town, where, depending on how long you reach over it, determines how far forward or back in time you go. Why it's this way, I couldn't tell you, but it has been since I first discovered it. I taught Mr. Alberton, our cousin, but he takes people with him, and the more people that do this, there's no telling what might happen. So I usually don't speak of it anymore. I'm only telling you this because it for some reason doesn't seem to affect you. So how is it that I'm part of the family, yet I'm not bound by the curse? I just don't understand." "I truly don't know, but I desperately want to find out in case there is a way to break the curse," she replied, rising from the table. "I think we all want to get to the bottom of it," Nathaniel said, as Deb shook her head in agreement. For the next couple of days, the whole group stayed at the hotel, and while Nathaniel had said that they could never truly take back the deeds of their forefathers regarding the town's curse, they could bless it now, along with the hotel, to help ward off evil spirits. It took them many days, but they accomplished this task. At the end of the week, on a beautiful, warm, sunny morning, they all packed up to leave. I gave them my thanks and appreciation, especially to Nathaniel and Deb, and saw them off as they got in their respective vehicles to leave. As Deb got in their yellow Volkswagen Beetle, she yelled out to me on the front stoop, "Don't be a stranger, and call me if you need anything or just want to talk." "Don't worry, I will," I giggled, waving to her as she got in and pulled out. Now that they were gone, I had to try and get to the bottom of things. The whole week, all I could think was, why am I able to cross the line when others in my family can't? Or was it all a fluke? I needed to know the answer to this question. The only way I could think to find out if it was a fluke or not was to go back to the town line and reach over and cross. In order to do this, I decided I was going to need a little help, and I knew just the person. So off to the post office I went. Once there, I opened the door and entered to see an all too familiar sight of Jasper sitting in his rocking chair by the front window, sipping on some coffee. "Do you always drink coffee? I have never seen you drink water ever in the whole time I've been here," I asked as I crossed the threshold. "I like coffee. Never cared much for straight water," he replied, without ever turning his gaze from the window. I know it's been a few days. I've had my hands full, but I wanted to thank you again for saving my life. Again, I told him, coming over to where he sat. It is becoming a common occurrence, ain't it? He teased. Apparently so, but don't expect any favors in return, I jokingly said right back. I do have one more favor to ask of you, though. He sighed deeply and turned to look at me with one eyebrow raised. Now what do you need? Was saving your life not enough heroics for the week? I rolled my eyes. No, it wasn't. I need help with a little project. I'm going to once again cross the town line, and I need someone to help me do it. His face went from quizzical to concerned in a matter of seconds. Oh, no, you're not. You could have died last time, and you could die this time. I ain't gonna help you. You have no idea why it even worked the first time. What if it was because the tribe was in town? They're gone now, and things may have changed. Sorry, but no. I refuse. I thought you might, I said, slowly turning and walking towards the door. I guess I'll just have to do it on my own. Jasper flew out of his chair and towards me, grabbing my arm in a vice grip. I don't think so. Yes, I am, I said as I wrenched my arm from his grip. I'm going to right now. With that, I opened the door and walked out, Jasper fast on my heels. The whole way to the edge of town, he tried to talk me out of it and get me to come to my senses, but my mind was already made up. I was going to figure out this latest mystery, even if it killed me. Once we came to the edge of town, we both stopped and stared at the strange line that ran across the ground. I had never seen the town line before. I wasn't expecting it to be literal, but there it was, traveling from east to west in a perfect straight line. I started to reach across when Jasper jerked me back once again. Just hold on a minute. Do you want to die? No, I don't want to die, but I'm going to figure out just what happened last night. Oh my good Lord, you are one stubborn person. Fine, you get what you want, I'll help. Just let me grab a rope or something, so if you die, I can pull your body back across, he said, letting me go. As he went to go grab the length of rope, I waited by the town line. I stared at the sandy, red earth beneath my feet and absent-mindedly kicked at the various rocks and pebbles in the dirt. As I kicked one particular pebble over the line, it disappeared into thin air. But it wasn't like the other things I saw disappear in the town. In the past, I had seen the townspeople disappear into a fine mist. I had seen some things disappear into ash, but I had never seen anything just cease to exist. I picked up a couple of the small rocks and threw them one at a time over the line. Just like the first one, they disappeared altogether the moment they went completely over. I grabbed a slightly bigger stone and placed it half on the line, half off. The rock just sat there, but then I noticed something strange about the rock. It was ever so slightly hovering above the ground. I went to pick it back up, and when I did, it disappeared in my hand altogether. It appeared that anything belonging to the town was subject to the space-time continuum. I got the rope, I heard Jasper say behind me. He held out one end of the rope to me. I took it and asked, "What exactly is this for?" "It's to tie around your waist while I hold on to the other end. That way, I can pull you back over should anything happen." I tied the rope securely around me and turned to face the town line. "Ready, Jasper?" "Ready as I'll ever be." "Well then, here goes nothing," I said, as I readied myself to cross the line. I first cautiously moved my hand across the town line. Nothing happened. I moved my whole arm in, and still, nothing happened. So I carefully moved each body part one at a time, a little closer and a little closer to the town's edge, and moved over it, squeezing my eyes shut in anticipation. Finally, before I truly realized it, I was entirely on the other side. I opened my eyes, and the first sight that greeted me was the wide-open dirt road leading into town. I followed its expanse as far as my eyes could see, then turned to look at Jasper, who stood staring at me from the other side of the line. Like me, we were both astonished. I had made it across the line without any damage, time hopping, or death occurring. We stood there in silence for a few moments, just taking everything in. It was then that I decided to remove the rope and see how far I could walk. I walked a fair distance, then came back and crossed the line again. Nothing happened, and I was just fine. I hopped over it, back and forth for a minute, just to see if it was yet again a fluke, but it wasn't. I was perfectly fine, safe and sound. As Jasper watched me do this, he seemed more shocked than I did. I was the first person in the history of my family and in the town to ever cross without any consequences. I was floored. Then my mind began to wonder at all the possibilities and just what this meant. At any time I could leave. Not just leave, I could go anywhere and come back unscathed. This opened a world of possibilities for me because it meant I was no longer trapped in the town. I came back across and told Jasper. I guess it wasn't linked to the tribe being here. I guess not. How do you feel? I feel just fine, I answered, as I started absent-mindedly walking back towards the hotel, lost in thought. Why do you think you can cross when no one else can? He asked, walking with me. I don't know. I just can't figure it out. I don't understand why I'm so special or different, I responded, as we both fell into silence. We walked then back to the hotel as Lily started to come back outside. She had been very quiet since I talked to her harshly that morning before breakfast. She came to sit on the front stoop in the sunshine that had just begun to peek out behind the overcast sky. Jasper ran to tell her what we discovered. I couldn't quite hear what was said, but I was able to watch their facial expressions. I watched Lily's go from wide-eyed astonishment to thoughtful to confusion, and finally to what I could only call jealousy. I understood, though. She was only one of the 4 who were actually still alive in the town and had been trapped for countless years, watching her life fade from boredom and the long years of restless wandering. I wish I could find out a way to allow her to cross the line, but I first would have to know why I could. I walked up to the group just in time to hear Lily say, "So now that she knows she can leave, do you honestly think she would stay now?" To which Jasper replied in a saddened realization, I don't suppose she will now, will she?" "I'm not planning on going anywhere," I said, walking up to them. "Yet," Lily curtly replied. "No, only maybe to visit some family or friends, but I would come back," I told them as I started walking up the steps of the hotel door. I had much to think about and find out. I left them to sit and talk things out between themselves. I knew they both thought I was going to abandon all involvement with the town and the hotel. It wasn't my intention, because I had come to enjoy the company of the townspeople and all of its oddities. I didn't want to leave, but I had to admit a visit to my mother and father would be very much appreciated. I figured that might be a good place to start my investigation as to why the normal rules of the town didn't seem to apply to me. Maybe they had some information as to what made me different. So I began to pack a bag and get ready to head out for an overnight visit to them. I got my overnight bag packed and headed down the stairs, and for the first time, I looked at the walls and pictures on my way with reverence and familiarity. I planned to return in the morning. As I walked down the front steps to the building, Jasper and Lily were both there. I explained where I was going and for how long, but neither seemed to believe my words. I knew they thought I was leaving for good, but I told them I was only going to be gone for a short overnight stay, lifting up my overnight bag as evidence of this. Lily sat and said not a single word. and just stared at the ground. As I turned and got in my Mustang, I heard Jasper solemnly say, "I guess this is goodbye then. We'll see you when we see you, I suppose." As he turned and walked away, disappearing from my sight into a fine mist, like I had seen all the other townspeople do.